Prime Minister, we're in North Wales because they will have the UK's first small modular reactor, but it appears you've upset the US. Are you worried about the implications it's going to have on a special relationship?
Well, first let me be really clear what this announcement is. This is the biggest announcement in North Wales for a generation. It's a small modular reactor at Wilver in North Wales. That will be 3,000 jobs, and we start next year. And that's partnering with Rolls-Royce, so hugely important. But alongside that, there's another announcement, which is the AI Growth Zone, which is going to be here in North Wales as well. The two will go together. That's another 3,500 jobs, and it's fantastic to be at this college. These are 16 to 19-year-olds whose future will be in these projects. So a really important announcement. So far as the US is concerned, I'm really pleased that on the state visit, we agreed to work more closely on civil nuclear.
Right. Buckle up, because what I'm about to tell you is a kind of political drama that makes Game of Thrones look like a vicarage tea party. Rachel Reeves, the woman who sits in number 11 Downing Street controlling the purse strings of the entire nation, is reportedly so toxic within her own party that Labour MPs are openly blaming her for everything that's gone wrong since they took power. And here's the kicker. One of her own backbenchers has said, and I quote, "Personally, I think she's fucked." Not struggling. Not facing challenges. Fucked. That's a level of confidence her own colleagues have in the Chancellor of the Exchequer. But wait, it gets better, because apparently her fate is so intertwined with Keir Starmer's that if she goes down, he goes down with her. It's like watching two people handcuffed together on a sinking ship, and neither of them can find the key. Quick favor. If you're absolutely living for this political chaos and want to stay updated on every twist and turn of this Westminster soap opera, hit that subscribe button and smash the bell icon. Over 94% of you watching haven't subscribed yet. It's free, takes literally 2 seconds, and helps us keep bringing you this content. Cheers if you've done it. Now, back to the absolute carnage. So let's start with the absolutely delicious irony at the heart of this story. Rachel Reeves has just delivered a budget that was specifically designed to appease the Labour backbenchers who'd been causing trouble. She announced the lifting of the two-child benefit cap, which was one of the most controversial policies she'd inherited from the Conservatives and which had Labour MPs up in arms. She said she'd hit online gambling with extra levies, going after an industry that's made billions while people gamble away their savings. She rolled out a mansion tax, targeting the wealthy property owners who've been laughing all the way to the bank while everyone else struggles with mortgage rates. These were all measures that should have made her popular with the Labour left. These were policies that ticked all the boxes of progressive economics. And yet, despite doing literally everything her backbenchers have been demanding, they are still blaming her for the government's problems. If that's not the definition of a thankless job, I don't know what is. One of her backbench colleagues, speaking with a kind of candor that usually requires several drinks and a promise of anonymity, called the situation a tragedy. And you know what? They're not entirely wrong. Because according to this MP, Reeves's latest financial plans included some great things that will genuinely help people. The policies themselves aren't bad. The intention seems sound. The direction of travel is actually what Labour voters wanted. But as this MP put it, as has been the story of this administration, they just haven't landed it. That's not a policy criticism. That's not disagreeing with the substance. That's saying the entire government is so politically incompetent that they can't even get credit for doing what people ask them to do. It's like watching someone bake a perfect cake and then trip over their own feet while carrying it across the room, landing face first in the icing. The cake was good. The execution was catastrophic. And according to this delightfully honest backbencher, they can trace the whole disaster back to what they call Reeves's absolute original sin. The decision to scrap the winter fuel payment last year. Now, for anyone who needs a refresher, the winter fuel payment was a universal benefit that went to pensioners to help them heat their homes during winter. It wasn't means-tested. It wasn't complicated. It just meant that elderly people, who are particularly vulnerable to the cold and often live on fixed incomes, got some help with their energy bills. And Reeves, in her infinite wisdom, decided to scrap it for all but the poorest pensioners. The justification was fiscal responsibility. We can't afford to give money to wealthy pensioners. We need to target support where it's most needed. All very sensible-sounding reasons. Except politically, it was an absolute disaster. This MP said it killed any honeymoon the government might have had. And they are right. Think about it. Labour comes into power after 14 years of Conservative rule. The country is desperate for change. There's goodwill. There's optimism. There's a genuine sense that things might get better. And one of the first major policy announcements is that we're taking money away from pensioners. Not from the super rich. Not from corporations dodging taxes. Not from the oligarchs parking their money in London property. From pensioners. The optics were horrendous. The politics was suicidal. And it set the tone for everything that followed. Every subsequent announcement, no matter how well-intentioned, has been viewed through the lens of that initial betrayal of trust. But here's where things get really interesting, and by interesting I mean absolutely mental. This same MP who's been explaining all of Reeves's problems then drops a bombshell about her political survival. They suggest that the fortunes of the Chancellor and Sir Keir Starmer are completely linked. She's safe as long as he's in number 10. But if she goes, he goes too, because they are so intertwined that you can't separate them. It's political symbiosis, or maybe political parasitism. Either way, they are stuck with each other. And then comes that absolutely devastating quote. Personally, I think she's fucked. But if Rachel goes, so goes Keir, because they are linked. That's not just criticism. That's a political death sentence with a stay of execution that depends entirely on whether the Prime Minister can cling to power. Think about what this actually means. We've got a Chancellor who's so unpopular within her own party that MPs are openly saying she's finished, but they also recognize that removing her would bring down the entire government. It's like having a captain of a ship who steered into an iceberg, but you can't throw them overboard because they're the only one who knows how to work the radio. You're stuck with them, even though everyone knows they're a liability, because the alternative is even worse. It's a perfect recipe for paralysis, resentment, and eventual catastrophe. And speaking of catastrophes, let's talk about the ethics investigation that wasn't. Because while all this internal Labour chaos is unfolding, Nigel Farage and Reform UK decided to get involved. Farage called for Sir Laurie Magnus, the independent advisor on ministerial standards, to investigate Rachel Reeves for potentially breaking the ministerial code. The allegation was that she'd been talking down the state of public finances to prepare political ground for tax hikes in the lead-up to the budget, and that this might constitute a breach of the rules after she'd received preliminary forecasts from the Office for Budget Responsibility. Now, whether you like Nigel Farage or think is a political equivalent of a persistent rash, the allegation wasn't entirely without merit. There's a long-standing tradition of incoming governments claiming that the books are worse than they thought, the cupboard is bare, there's a massive black hole in the finances, and so on. It's politically convenient because it allows you to blame the previous lot for all the difficult decisions you're about to make. But there are rules about what ministers can and can't say, particularly once they've seen official forecasts. You can't just make stuff up or deliberately mislead the public, even if it's politically advantageous. But here's the thing. So Laurie Magnus informed Farage that there wouldn't be an investigation. Case closed. Nothing to see here. Move along. Now, you can interpret this in several ways. Maybe Reeves didn't actually break any rules. Maybe the allegations were politically motivated nonsense from Reform UK trying to cause trouble. Or maybe the threshold for investigating ministerial conduct is so high that you'd need to see a minister literally stuffing cash into their pockets on live television before anyone bothered to look into it. Whatever the reason, Reeves dodged that particular bullet. But dodging one bullet doesn't help much when your own party members are lining up to take shots at you from the inside. And then we get to Prime Minister's questions this week, which gave us a perfect snapshot of where we are politically. Kimi Badenoch, the Conservative leader who's still finding her feet in the job, asked Keir Starmer a question that was so loaded it needed a safety warning. Does the Prime Minister believe that when an organisation descends into total shambles, the person at the top should resign? Now, that's not subtle. That's not clever political wordplay. That's just straight up asking the Prime Minister if he thinks he should resign because his government is a shambles. And Starmer, to give him credit, didn't take the bait. His response was classic political deflection. He said he was very proud to lead the party at the budget last week, where the Chancellor protected the NHS, created conditions for economic stability, avoided repeating the mistake of austerity, and took £150 off energy bills. They are fixing the mess of Conservatives left. He's proud to be doing so. It's boilerplate stuff. It's the kind of answer you could program a robot to give. But what's interesting isn't what he said, It's what he didn't say. He didn't defend Rachel Reeves personally. He didn't praise her brilliant fiscal management. He didn't say she was doing an amazing job and had his full confidence. He just defended the budget's policies and moved on. That's not exactly a ringing endorsement of your Chancellor when your own backbenchers are calling her fucked. Let's zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture here, because what we're witnessing is genuinely fascinating from political science perspective. Labour came to power with a massive majority. They had a clear mandate. They had goodwill from voters who were desperate for change after years of conservative chaos. They had all the advantages you could possibly want as a new government. And in less than a year, they managed to alienate significant portions of their own party, tank in the polls, and create a situation where senior backbenchers are openly discussing the Chancellor's political demise while acknowledging that it would bring down the Prime Minister too. How did this happen? Well, according to that anonymous MP, it started with the winter fuel payment decision, that original sin, the moment that killed the honeymoon. But it's gone beyond that single decision. It's become a pattern of poor political judgment, bad communications, and a complete failure to understand how their policies are landing with both the public and their own MPs. You can have all the right policies in the world, but if you can't sell them, if you can't explain them, if you can't make people understand why you're doing what you're doing, then you might as well not bother. Politics isn't just about governance. It's about communication. It's about narrative. It's about making people believe that you're on their side and working for their interests. And Labour has comprehensively failed at that under Starmer and Reeves. The tragedy, and yes it is a tragedy, is that some of the policies are actually good. Lifting the two-child benefit cap will genuinely help families who are struggling. Taxing online gambling more heavily is sensible when the industry is making enormous profits while contributing to gambling addiction and financial ruin. A mansion tax on the wealthiest property owners is progressive taxation that most Labour voters would support. These aren't bad policies.